going to look at the Cold War today, and then next week we look at decolonization, and then the following week, the last class, we begin the fall of the Soviet Union. So the Cold War begins after World War II, when the four victors, Russia, France, England, and the United States, occupied Germany. They also occupied the capital, Berlin, which was also split into four spheres. Friction and distrust developed when the United States offered a common currency that would be good in all four sectors of the divided country. The Soviet Union saw this as propaganda, as a capitalist plan, a way to influence the political future of Germany. Before we get to what happened, I want to suggest that some historians argue that the Cold War started much earlier. In a book by the Swedish historian Odd Arne Westad argues that it really started in 1917. That's when the Russian Revolution started and when the Russians left World War I. We backed the Bolshevik opposition. He notes that not only did Lenin end Russia's war against Germany, he proclaimed that the supreme aim of the state was revolution in all of Europe, preferably by violence. That distrust in Russia began some 25 years before World War II. This background or context may help understand the distrust and suspicion with which the two countries see each other after World War II. Threatened with a single currency, Stalin responded by closing Berlin to all train and car traffic. He hoped to force the democratic leaders to cave in and cancel the common currency. He was prepared to starve Berlin until the Western leaders changed their minds. The West responded to this first major test of the Cold War by flying in supplies to Berlin. Stalin said nothing about air traffic, only rail and car. This was the beginning of the so-called Berlin Airlift, in which supplies were shipped or flown to Berlin every day. By year's end, a flight landed every minute. The Berlin Airlift was the first major event of the Cold War. Shortly after that event was resolved, Prime Minister Winston Churchill made a famous speech at Westminster College in Fulton, Missouri. In that speech, he declared that from Stettin in the Atlantic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has developed across the country. President Truman offered a doctrine to deal with the Soviet Union called containment. It stated that the United States would intervene in worldwide conflicts relating to the containment of communism. That Truman doctrine explains why we got into the Vietnam and Korean wars. We wanted to stop and contain communism before it spread. Today, we will look at a number of events events, including the Berlin airlift that developed during the Cold War. Some, like the Korean War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, brought us very close to nuclear war. The war pitted the democratic West against the communist East. Capitalism versus socialism. You will examine 3 Cold War events on a student-paced pear deck. There are a lot of images that make the slideshow seem larger than it really is. If you do not finish by the end of class, please finish it for homework and turn it in by Sunday. So that is the schedule for the day. Are there any questions? If not, I will post the link for the pear deck.